my name's John Cordy, and I drove my parents' Ford Escort for a while when I was working in a supermarket, obviously. Today's Saturday, and that means that I do some sort of reflection on whether things that I might have got wrong in videos during the week or things that I wish I had done slightly differently. Or maybe like views that I held on guitar and practice and all those things, and things that if I knew what I know now, I might have done slightly differently. So the first thing to say is that I did a video with the Line 6 Pod Go talking about the differences between the Helix, and I mentioned that the Rochester compressor, which is one of the new compressors, wasn't on the Pod Go. It wasn't on the firmware update that I was using, but I've since updated and they've included that one on the latest firmware, so that's cool. But I was wrong about that. Someone did jump in the comments, which was helpful, and pointed that out, so that was how I now know that I can use that, which is my favourite compressor, so that's definitely good news. I wanted to talk about some just other little ideas that came to me. I don't know if there's any young people that watch this channel that are sort of developing in their guitar playing still, but one of the things that I wish I'd started working on earlier, because it's probably one of the things that gets me the most enjoyment out of the guitar now, is playing guitar unaccompanied, solo, and with no metronome, no click or anything like that. So you're just relying on your own kind of inner rhythm and your inner musician and metronome, I guess, to kind of dictate what is happening with the pulse and what is happening with the music. There's a few things to mention on this. I myself generally spent a lot of my time working with a metronome or a drum machine or backing tracks or music, certainly as I was growing up. But actually there's quite a lot of my gigs that I do now, so whether they be solo gigs or duo gigs, where I'm the person who's responsible for the tempo. And I think this has not been a massive part of what I practiced as I was developing as a musician or, growing up. And I think it's something that I wish I'd had a chance to work on or known that I needed to work on a bit more. So yes, working with a metronome is good, but I think it also makes sense to practice without a metronome, so you've got a chance to build up your own kind of timing and feeling for what it's like to play sort of unaccompanied. Not only that, but I think it's really cool to be able to sit down and kind of just make music. This is something that I try to do every day. So whether that's playing a jazz standard, and also get used to the sound of a guitar by itself, and get used to that sound, whether it's the difference between chords or single lines. And get used to the kind of sound of space that a solo guitar can inhabit. So, one of the things that's kind of cool about some of Joe Pass's playing, for instance, is that it sounds like he's completely comfortable with the sound of just the guitar playing a single line, as much as he is comfortable with it sounding the sound of like chord melody. So, whilst for me, my judgment when I'm playing the guitar is that when I go into a single line, it suddenly sounds like the bottom is falling out of whatever's happening. That's just an aspect of solo guitar, I think. So that kind of getting used to that feeling of what it is to be having chord melody, but also being comfortable with just playing lines that exist. If you hear a sax player improvising, for instance, unaccompanied, I think some of that's a really beautiful sound. So if you listen to someone like Ben Wendell or Chris Potter, obviously they can't play chords whilst they're playing melodies or improvising, but I think it still sounds just as beautiful if you've ever heard some of that stuff. So get used to the feeling of having shades of light and dark, space and density, all those feelings. And the only way really to get comfortable with this stuff is just to take the leap. So if you're wondering about how you start playing chord melodies, obviously you get lots of stuff written down. There'll be people that are willing to share their own arrangements. But for me, many of my kind of arrangements aren't really set in stone, because the goal for me was to develop more of a kind of spontaneous ability on the guitar. So I don't necessarily plan a lot of my stuff. I'm trying to get comfortable with the idea of improvising, and some of that might include chord melody. Some of it might just be single lines, but that's what I'm working on. The only real way to do it, I think, is just to start doing it and figuring out what style it is that you're playing. There's kind of lots of different styles of chord melody. There's some that for every melody note will have a different chord. For me personally, it's more about just hanging some chords on that melody. And the melody is the more important part for me, that kind of maintains a rhythm. So yeah, there's a few different ways around that, but try and start to explore chord melody and solo guitar when you're younger, if you are watching this video, because I think it's something that's going to be super useful for you when you grow up, not just as when you do duo gigs with a singer, for instance, or something like that, but even when you're just at home, or if someone, this is something that happened to me a lot when I was younger, someone said, "I'll play us something," and what can I play? Because normally anytime I play anything, I'd have some sort of backing, or I'd be playing a song that I knew but probably they didn't. Whereas now, by the time I hit my 30s, if my mum and dad or a family member says, "Oh, can you play this tune?" then normally the answer is yes if I've heard it. So it's kind of a lot more entertaining. I get more out of it, and I think also people that are listening are going to get potentially more out of it. It's great to be able to play an Yngwie Malmsteen piece potentially, but if no one else that has ever heard that song, I think, or like for me, it was I used to play a lot of Dream Theater, but to be honest, no one that I knew listened to Dream Theater, so it's kind of a completely solo pursuit, and I try and play it to someone or whatever. It's, it might be fairly impressive that you can sweep pick or whatever, but no one's necessarily enjoying what you're doing as much as you are. Whereas I think once you start to play some solo guitar and be able to kind of just make music out of stuff that you've heard, I think there's something that's more enjoyable, and you sort of get the sense that other people are enjoying it as well, if that makes sense. The other thing that I wanted to just quickly touch on is something that historically I've sort of said that I don't really hybrid pick much in terms of like line playing. Obviously I hybrid pick when I'm playing chords and chord melody, but it's something that I've but it's sort of been a bit late to adopt, but I've seen Jonathan Kreisberg doing it, guys like Thomas Griggs, Tom Quayle, David Beebe, these people doing hybrid picking, and it's made me consider some stuff, specifically the stuff that I did a video on a short while ago by Jonathan Kreisberg. He was playing From the Ashes and he was doing, what was it? That sort of stuff, and it's made me kind of think, actually, in a jazz setting, for sure, there's some places where this hybrid picking stuff might be super appropriate. So I put together a little short exercise, which I'll probably delve into a little bit more at a later stage. So that's just a little thing that I'm working on that I thought I'd share with you quickly, but I'm going to do another video on that probably next Wednesday. Anyway, so I guess the lesson for me was that there's plenty of useful stuff in techniques that you may not be totally familiar with. I don't think it's necessarily worth identifying yourself by which techniques you use, if that makes sense. So you might think of yourself, I'm an alternate picking guy, or I'm a strict hybrid picking guy. Maybe it's worth exploring both, because I can see there's a benefit to hybrid picking that, because it means my right hand gets tired much less quickly. If I could play it. That's some thoughts that I had this week, some things that I thought I'd share with you, things that I sort of wish that I'd known earlier on, or things that I wish I'd thought about a bit sooner in my guitar life, but it is what it is. But if you're a younger viewer watching this, or whatever age you are, hopefully that's vaguely helpful for you. There's a Buy Me a Coffee link if you wanted to check that out. This morning I drank a coffee with sour milk in it, which was super cool, because Leanna bought some milk which went out of date today. She bought it yesterday, so that's useful. But yeah, only use that link and buy me a coffee if you got something useful out of this lesson, or you like what I do on the channel and you can afford to do so. Otherwise, just liking and subscribing also helps. But thank you for stopping by, and I'll catch you for another video soon. Cheers.